fundamental understanding about my life as a speaker, and really about yours too. When it comes to speaking, I can no longer get ready to speak. I have to stay ready to speak. My new motto is don't get ready, stay ready. You like that motto? Yeah, don't get ready, stay ready. So what did I just do? I told a story and I made a point. In speaking, you want to tell a story and make a point. But let me ask you a question. Raise your hand. Have you ever seen a story that was all over the place? Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever given one? Me too. And it's because the speaker doesn't start crafting his message in the right place. One of the first things the speaker needs to do when you start to craft your story is come up with what I call a foundational phrase. Now, what's a foundational phrase? Don't get ready, stay ready. For another story I tell, what's the foundational phrase? Never stop asking questions. For another story I tell, what's the foundational phrase? What got you here won't get you there. So you've got to tell a foundational phrase. Okay, now understand this. Have you ever wondered what to keep in a story and what to keep out? Write this down. The phrase determines what stays. The phrase determines what stays. If what you say supports your foundational phrase, keep it in. If it doesn't, toss it out, even if it's good. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think this means? No phrase, no stage. What's that mean? Go ahead and unmute yourself if you have an answer to that. No phrase, no stage. What does that mean? Feel free to unmute yourself and answer that. Panos, yes.
If you're not sure what phrase is, you better not take the stage yet.
That's right. That's it. If you don't have a foundational phrase for your story, don't take it to the stage yet because it's not ready. So the question is, where do I take it? The answer is take it to Toastmasters, right? They will give you a foundational phrase. They'll tell you some other things too, but they'll give you a foundational phrase. I had a story that I wanted to tell, but I couldn't tell it because I didn't have a point. Give you an example. Here it is. I want to tell this story, but I didn't have a point. Here's an example. You ever gone to a drive-through restaurant, placed your order and been misunderstood? I can't mention the name of this restaurant, but its initials are K, F, and C. So imagine this, you're in my passenger seat, we're driving through the KFC, and I always order 3 thighs. That's the only part of the chicken I like. So we get up to the intercom, and she says, "Welcome to KFC, may I help you?" I said, "Yes, I would like 3 thighs." She said, "Small or large?" And before I could even register it, I just blurted out, "Do you have large thighs?" Yeah, I'm gonna recommend that you never ask anybody that question. And she came back and says, "Yes, we have small and large sides. How may I help you?" But by now I'm just rolling over in embarrassment. And I called a friend of mine that night and he said, "Craig, what you say is not always what they hear." Boom. Guess what I have now? A foundational phrase I can use for every communication and leadership speech I have moving forward. So very important to tell a story, make a point, foundational phrase. Now, mute yourself if you just came on. If you just came on, mute yourself, please. Okay, good. Now, really quickly, what did you notice about those foundational phrases? Feel free to hit unmute. What did you notice about the foundational phrase? What got you here won't get you there. Don't get ready, stay ready. What did you notice? Julius.
It's short but sweet.
Yeah, write this down. Stay with me, Julius. Write this down. Your foundational phrase should be fewer than 10 words. Why? Why do you think, Julius?
Because in order to sustain the attention of the audience.
Okay, because the audience will lose attention with 11 words, right? Yeah, we want to maintain that attention. But the other reason is it's memorable. They can memorize it, they can repeat it, they can remember it, but so can you. But here's the real reason it needs to be fewer than 10 words, because it forces you to be crystal clear on what your message is, right? Make no mistake about it. The number one reason a speaker won't get his message across is because he's not crystal clear on what his message is. Fewer than 10 words forces you to be absolutely crystal clear. So you tell a story, you make a point, foundational phrase, fewer than 10 words. Now, we're about to get into my storytelling model so that you can make every single story you give for the rest of your life much better. All right? I need to click over here, but people are in my way. Okay, here we go. Here's my storytelling model. But before we get into the model, you've got to understand something very important. You got to have a reference story. So you're going to hear a story from me, and then we're going to go and deconstruct it with the model, and then we'll build it back so that you can make every story you give better in the future. What do you think is the number one thing that stands between most people living their dreams? What do you think that is? Most people will say fear, right? What do you think, Rafiq?
I think it's ourselves.
Yeah, ourselves, fear, lack of money, lack of this. Most people will say that. That's not the number one thing. The number one thing is not what you think. See, I used to work for an internet company, and I wanted to go full-time into professional speaking. That was my goal. That was my dream. Raise your hand if you have a goal or a dream. Raise your hand if you want to do anything in life. Yeah, me too. So I went to the vice president of this company. He was a young guy, good-looking guy. He looked like a young David Beckham. And I said, look, John, I'm going to be leaving because it's always been my dream to be a full-time professional speaker. He said, that's your dream, Craig? I said, yes, it is. He said, well, that's great. I really admire you for having one, but you can't leave. I said, hold on, what do you mean I can't leave? He said, well, Craig, we've been thinking about it, and we're going to raise your salary up to this. Now, salary means the same thing in the Philippines, right? Yeah. And you see my dilemma. I said, John, this is not a financial decision. This is about my dream. I'd call this a dream decision. He said, okay, I understand. I really do. But how about if we raise your salary up to this? I said, this is not a financial decision. This is a dream decision. Do you know he raised it 4 times? I kid you not. He kept saying, we're going to raise your salary to this. I said, this is not a financial decision. This is a dream decision. Well, listen to what he said to me.
He said, okay, Craig, how about if we raise your salary to well above 6 figures? I said, dreams are overrated. Come on now. 6 figures. Back then, shoot, that's good money today. I could fill up my gas tank for a week on that kind of salary. I said, but John, before I say yes to you, I got to go home and talk to my wife. So I went home to my wife. I said, honey, I don't know what to do. What do you think I should do? What should I do? And my wife looked up at me with her big brown eyes and said, take the money, fool.
You like my wife, don't you? But if you've been sitting beside my wife and me just a few moments later on our old beat up black leather sofa with the chocolate chip cookies baking in the background, you would have heard her say something that can absolutely change your life. And I know it because it changed mine. She said, Craig, this is all you've ever wanted. Ever since we met, this is all you've ever talked about. I don't care how much they try to compensate you. Your dream is not for sale. That's deep, isn't it? Because most people think the number one thing that stands between them and their dreams is some kind of bad obstacle, a lack of time, a lack of energy, a lack of money. That's not it. The number one thing that stands between most people living their dreams is not something bad. It's something good that we settle for, right? A good job, a good relationship, a good life. Did you realize that sometimes the enemy of the best is the good? So let me ask you a question right now. When it comes to storytelling, when it comes to your stories, are you too good to be great? I looked at my wife. I said, see, girl, that's why I married you. My dream is not for sale. That's what you said, right? And I walked back in there the next day and I looked at Vice President in his eyes and I was firm. I looked him directly in his face and I was bold. And I said to him, my wife said my dream is not for sale. And I left. And that very year, I spoke over 160 times in 44 states and 5 countries. And I'm happy to say I've been running my mouth ever since. All right. But there's nothing special about me. There's something very special about the advice my wife gave me. No matter how good you are, what you do, don't let that good get in the way of the best. And no matter where you are in your life at this time, especially these difficult times, remember the words of my wife, your dream is not for sale. Your dream is not for sale. Now stop right there. Tell a story, make a point, foundational phrase. Your dream is not for sale. We're going to deconstruct that story in a minute. But before we do, you got to understand something. I went to Mysore, India, And I gave that story. And I woke up the next day in the hotel and they slid a newspaper under my door. And when I picked it up, it had a big picture of me on the front cover. Headline read this: "Your dream is definitely not for sale." When you have a foundational phrase, it's going to be remembered, it's going to be repeated. And if you are speaking professionally, it's going to help you get rehired. So let's go into the model now. Let's dive in. I'm going to ask some questions. I want you to really speak up and see if you have some of the answers here. We're not going over all 9 C's. We're just going to go over a few of the most important C's in this model. And it should be in your handout as well. All right, so let's look at the first one. Who were the characters in my story? Just unmute yourself, yell some of the characters in my story. Who were they? Who were the characters in my story? Feel free to unmute.
Wife.
Okay, somebody said the vice president. What did the vice president look like? What did
Young
the vice
David
president
Beckham.
look? I'm scrolling through to see who's talking. What did the vice president, does anybody remember what the vice president looked like?
Yes, I do. You said
Who's
he
that?
looked like Roanne.
Okay, go ahead, Roanne. Go ahead.
You said he looked like a young David Beckham.
Okay, can you see that? Can you see him? Can you see? Yeah, he looked like a young David Beckham. Now,
I can
now let me ask you this. Roanne, stay with me. Stay with me, Roanne. He looked like a young David Beckham. Here's what you do when it comes to characters. Give a hint to what they look like, right? I said he looked like a young David Beckham. You could still see him. Patricia Fripp taught me something very important before she charged me. She said, Craig, people won't remember what you say as much as they'll remember what they see when you say it. So you've got to make your characters visible, flesh and blood. So I give a hint to what the character looks like. Now, let me ask you this. Why would I just give a hint rather than giving the entire description? Why wouldn't I say he looked like he was about 6 feet 2 inches? He had the black slick back hair. Panos.
Because then you involve our imagination and that runs deeper.
That's exactly right. Remember this, people buy into what they help create. If I did all the creation for them, there's nothing left for the audience to do. So just give a hint and let them mentally fill in the rest. Okay, give you an example. One time I was telling a story about this swamp tour in the Louisiana Bayou that my wife and I were on. And at the end of the story, I asked the audience, I said, what did the guide to our swamp tour look like? And this big burly guy who was sitting in the corner, he said, the guide to your swamp tour had a ponytail. I said, he didn't have a ponytail. What makes you think he had a ponytail? And this big burly guy stood up in my audience and said, because that's how I saw him. I said, well, you know what? You're absolutely right. He did have a ponytail. I forgot, like from a horse. Yes, he did. But here's the thing. He's right. I don't care how he sees him as long as he sees him. Now, here's a quiz question for you. What did the guy in my audience look like? Yeah, Rafiq knows, big and burly. You can still see him. So just describe your characters, whether you do it in dialogue or not. Okay, very important. Now, the next most important thing, actually the most important thing of storytelling is your conflict. Immediately when you introduce your characters, you got to throw them into a conflict. Okay, write this down. Conflict is the hook. The earlier you establish the conflict, the sooner you have your audience hooked in. So what was the conflict in my story? When was the exact moment of conflict in my story? It was when the vice president said, you can't leave. That was when the Titanic hit the iceberg. You have to know the exact moment of conflict in your story or you don't have a story. But here's what a lot of speakers fail to do. They establish the conflict, but then they don't escalate it. You got to make it worse. Think about it. If the Titanic hit the iceberg, that's something. But if the water never rose on the Titanic, that would have been a terrible movie. Okay? So it's very important to ask yourself, how can I make the water rise on the Titanic in my story? So speaking out, how did I escalate my conflict? Go ahead and unmute yourself and yell it out. How did I escalate my conflict and make it worse? I don't care who it is. You can just yell out. All right, well, I'll just tell you, I escalated the conflict by he kept giving me more and more money. He kept giving me more and more money. I kept getting more frustrated, more flattered, more frustrated, more flattered. Now, here's the thing. You have to show it while you say it. I'm going to introduce you to 3 ahs. And the first ah that you should be thinking while you're going through your conflict is frustration, desperation. Okay? And then once you get to the edge of your conflict, you get to what I call the cure scene. And the cure scene, 2 things happen. Number 1, you get a cure. You get some kind of recipe, some kind of formula, some kind of toolkit, some kind of piece of advice, something that helps you overcome the conflict. But here's the second thing that you have in the cure scene. You have what I call a guru. And the guru is the person, place, or thing that gives you the cure. The guru could be a book. It could be somebody you met in the past. It can be a sculpture. It can be a paint. It can be anything. But the one thing the guru shouldn't be is you. Let's unpack that for a second. Why shouldn't you be the guru of your own story? Go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself. Why shouldn't you? I'm going to go with Panos. He's going to be Mr. Reliable today. Why shouldn't you be the guru of your own story, Panos?
You're making it perhaps all about yourself. That would be my first thought. And you're positioning yourself much higher than your audience. So you might sound like you're looking down to them.
That's it. And so what happens to the audience's motivation to go out and do what you said they can do if they think you're special? What happens to them? Exactly. So I always say this, never make yourself special. Always make yourself similar to your audience. Because if you make yourself special, they're going to say, you know what? Of course these strategies work for him. He's special. They'll never work for me. But if you take yourself off of that pedestal, then they'll say, you know what? If those strategies can work for Craig Valentine, they better be able to work for me. That's what you want. Did you have a thought, Rafiq?
I was just thinking, maybe realization makes you feel in your story like you're the guru, right? Realization can also be a guru.
Yeah. I mean, but here's what you have to dig for, Rafiq. You got to dig for who initially taught me that? Who planted that seed in my life? What book did I read? What person did I meet? What mentor did I have? And you got to dig for the guru sometimes. Sometimes it's not as straight. So who was the guru in my story? Who was my guru? My wife.
Your wife.
Right? That's exactly right. That's why people are trying to Facebook friend my wife, right? For motivation. So very important for the guru not to be you. Now, once you get your cure, what was the cure she gave me? A change in perspective. Your dream is not for sale. Don't let the good get in the way of the best. After that, you go to the change. What's the change? Well, you took us through the problem. Now take us through the payoff. What was my payoff? My payoff was this. I went out and spoke 160 times in 44 states and 5 countries. And here's the most important part. I'm happy to say I've been running my mouth ever since. If you have an emotional change, you have a story. So let's go back to the 3 ahs. And the 3 ahs are in your facial expression and in your energy should feel like this. The conflict ah should feel like this. Ah. The cure ah should feel like this. Aha. And the change ah should feel like this. Ah. Relief. If you can take your audience on that type of roller coaster ride, you're doing great things. Okay? Now, raise your hand if you'd like to add humor to your stories. Okay. Never add humor to your stories. Lee, never add humor to your stories. Always uncover humor within them. There's a big difference. I'm going to show you exactly where you can look for your humor. You look in your stories. More specifically, you look in your characters. More specifically, you're going to find the humor in your character dialogue. Think about the humor in my story. The dialogue was, dreams are overrated. Funny line, dialogue. Take the money, fool. Funny line, dialogue. My wife said my dream is not for sale. Funny line. Almost all the humor in that story came from dialogue. It's already in your story. You just need to dig it out. Okay? Give you another example. I want you to watch this story and see how the humor comes from the dialogue. And later we'll talk about how it comes from the spaces in between the lines. So take a look at this story. I think this is in Ireland.
Raise your hand if you feel like sometimes reality hurts. Yeah, now be honest. Have you ever stepped on a scale and been forced to face reality? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably looking at me like, Craig, what do you know about stepping on a scale? I mean, look at you. You're obviously built like a Greek statue. I appreciate the compliment. But I can only say that because if you had seen me a few years ago, trust me, you would have seen a lot more of me. In fact, you should have been with my wife and me 6.5 years ago. We're taking my 6-month-old daughter, Tori, to her doctor's appointment. Now, raise your hand if you have kids. Then you know the doctor's always going to measure their length and their weight, right? Somebody said height. Let me explain the length when you turn them. Anyway. Doc walks in with his white coat and glasses. He takes Tori's length. Then he looks at my wife and me and he says, since Tori can't stand yet and she can't seem to sit still, we're going to need another method to take her weight. How about this? Why doesn't one of you step out into the hallway and step on the scale with Tori, and then step on the scale without Tori, and we'll take the difference as her weight? Now, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who just recently gave birth, but my wife was looking at us like, oh, that's a wonderful idea for Craig to do. I said, no problem, I know what I weigh. I jumped up on that scale. I said, give me my daughter. I took my daughter, stripped her down to her diapers. I'm feeling good, holding my 6-month-old daughter in my arms. I look down at that scale. I look back at my wife. I look back at that scale. I said, good grief, this is a fat baby.
Now, obviously, you saw some dialogue there, right? You saw some dialogue, right? But here's the thing. Remember, there are different types of dialogue that most speakers never tap into. The first obvious type of dialogue is character-to-character dialogue, like I was doing before with the dreams are overrated, or take the money, fool, and that type of thing. But what about inner dialogue, right? The inner dialogue was at the end when I said, this is a fat baby. I didn't say that out loud. This is something I thought, right? But here's my favorite type of dialogue. It's the most confusing one for people to pick up, but I love it. I absolutely love it. It's called projected dialogue. You project dialogue onto another character based on how they're looking at you. So remember when I said, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who just recently gave birth, but my wife was looking at us like, oh, that's a wonderful idea for Craig to do. She didn't say that. She was looking at us like, that's a wonderful idea for Craig to do. So guess what? If somebody's looking at you in a certain way, you can use this stem. She was looking at me as if to say, and then use the dialogue, and it lands just like character-to-character dialogue lands. It's just as powerful. I did the same thing with the audience, right? I projected dialogue onto them. I said, you know, I know you're looking at me, I know what you're thinking. You're looking at me like, Craig, what do you know about stepping on a scale? You're obviously built like a Greek statue, right? Now, they weren't thinking that, but I projected that dialogue onto them anyway. So this is one of the biggest freedoms you have as a speaker, is to project dialogue onto somebody based on how they look at you. So 3 types of dialogue: character to character, projected dialogue, inner dialogue, and then you're gonna get some actual audience dialogue also. Remember when somebody said height, and I said, yeah, listen, somebody said height. When you take their length and you turn them, that becomes the height. So there's all kind of dialogue that you can use with your audience. So these are just some quick ideas on how to craft your message. I need a very good volunteer, and there might be a prize in it for you, on how to deliver your message. So raise your hand if you would like to volunteer. It'd be a very big prize in it for him. I'm going Pano since he's been volunteering this whole time. So unmute yourself. Here's what I want you to do. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Okay, good. So Panos, I want you to imagine that you're in front of an audience of, let's say, 200 people. Like not Zoom, like really in front of them. And I want you to find out how many of them have ever been to the United States. So what would you say?
Ladies and gentlemen, raise your hand if you have ever been to this thing called USA.
All right, hold on. Let me stop you before you go into your own keynote speech. That was fantastic. But let me ask you, stay with me, panels. How would you like a tool you can use to make a deeper connection with your audience than you've ever felt before? If so, just say yes. Okay, good. Then this is a slight edge principle, which means it's a slight change in the way you do things. But if you do it throughout your entire presentation, what a difference in how your audience will feel your message, not just hear you. Okay, so panelists, when your audience members leave your speech, hopefully at the end, do you want them to leave thinking, I really felt like I was part of a group? Or do you want them to leave thinking, whoa, it really felt like Panos was speaking directly to me? What do you want, A or B? B. Yeah.
B.
How many people did you just speak to? Everybody. How many
Only
people should you speak to?
B.
One.
So how can you rephrase your question to make it sound and feel grammatically like you're speaking to one rather than 200?
Use the pronoun
Raise your hand if you've been to the USA.
That's it. That's it. Or have you been to the USA? Can you imagine? Should you, would you, could you, singular grammatically? Write this down. It will change your public speaking life. Speak to one, but look to all. Speak to one, but look to all. There are far too many speakers speaking to far too many people far too often. And you'll hear them. They'll say things like ladies and gentlemen, and friends, and boys and girls, and societal members, and members of the committee, and society members, and this and that. You might as well be saying friends, Romans, countrymen. Stop. Speak to one. Have you ever heard a speaker say, now some of you might be thinking, guess what? There is no some of you. Now you might be thinking. Feel the difference? Right, Craig? Right? Yeah. You ever heard a speaker say, now many of you probably came to the conclusion. Guess what? There is no many of you. Now, in case you've come to the conclusion. So I'm not going to just leave you alone. Panels, I'm going to give you a test. You're going to be able to, you can take what I call the hallway test, and this will show you whether or not you can take it up on stage. So watch this. Speak to one, but look to all. Now I'm going to give you a test. This is something that you can do to make sure that you're speaking to one, but looking to all. It's what I call the hallway test. So Heather and I, here's how it goes. If you can walk by one person in the hallway and you can say it, then you can take it up on stage. So Heather and I, we're going to just walk by each other in the hallway and just see what happens. How many of you have ever been to Baltimore? Unless she's civil, we got a problem. Now, watch this. We're going to walk by each other again. Let's see what happens. Have you ever been to Baltimore?
Yeah, I used to live there.
How have it to grace. Now, you see the difference? If I can say it there, I can take it up on stage. All right, got it? So, Panos, you have the lesson? Go ahead and rephrase your question.
I thought the last way I put it was valid. So
it was. Go ahead, say that again. But I want you to make sure you look to all. So if you're in front of a real audience, you want to speak to one, but you want to look to all, because you don't want to do this. I teach the lesson to some people, Panos, and they go to one audience member and they go like this. You ever been to Baltimore? Huh? How about you? You been to Baltimore? What about you? You ever been to Baltimore? You look very Baltimore. It's going to take you a long time to go through your audience like that. All right. No, but you got it correct the second time. So let's give him a hand. Let's give Panos a hand. Fantastic job. I got a prize in it for you. I'll make sure I work with the coordinators and I'll get it to you. Excellent. All right. Now, here's something I want you to just watch. I was in Ireland and I want you to watch this story because we're going to get into how you get into your characters. It's extremely, extremely important. So just take a look at this. And then it's a very quick story. And I was in Ireland. Just take a look. Speak to one. If I can get past this slide. Here we go. In fact, raise your hand if you watched any of the Summer Olympics. Oh, I love the Summer Olympics. But I like the 2012 Summer Olympics even better. Because, do you know who the oldest participant in the 2012 Summer Olympics was? Yes,
Yes, it was a 74-year-old equestrian from Japan. 74-year-old equestrian from Japan. So my 7-year-old son and I are watching this on TV, and of course all the commentators kept harping on was the guy's age. Right? They just kept saying, he's 74. Can you believe he's 74? By golly, he's 74. Finally, my 7-year-old son looked up and said, well, how old is the horse?
All right, somebody came in and stepped on my punchline there. Please make sure you mute yourself. But anyway, my son said, how old is the horse? Now, the reason I asked this, the reason I play this clip is because I wanted you to see the characters. When you're in stories, you got to mimic correctly. If my son is 7 years old, it makes sense that he's looking up to me. I take on his facial expression, okay? And we got to mimic correctly. I'll give you an example. You ever see speakers go like this? I was on a telephone call the other day, and I'm like, what phone were you on the other day that's shaped like this? So here's what you need to do. You need to lift your phone up to your ear, pull it off, and now that's your phone. Make it as realistic as possible. One of my best friends is Darren LaCroix, and Darren LaCroix and I were doing a boot camp one time, and one of the speakers said, I was driving down the road the other day, and Darren said, were you driving the space shuttle? Like, what is going on here? I don't understand. I was in China. I was in Guangzhou, China years ago, and there was a lady who went up to give her speech, and I kid you not, this is exactly what she said. She said, I went to my 4-year-old daughter, and I said, honey. And I was in China, so I was like, is your daughter Yao Ming? What's going on? I don't understand this at all. So you got to mimic correctly. Okay, so you have some ideas on how to craft your message, some ideas on how to deliver your message, but I also want you to realize this. It's the spaces and faces between the lines that are really going to be what's most powerful for you. The spaces and faces between the lines. Give you a quick example. Raise your hand if you've ever been in one of the speech contests. All right, so when I won the club level and then I won the area level, I was going to the division level. And we were holding it at the Red Cross building in Baltimore City. And so I get to the Red Cross building, I go to the elevator, I'm gonna go from the first floor to the third floor. But as soon as I get on the elevator, a guy gets on with me. And he looked like he could be a minister or a preacher or something like that. And the moment he saw me, he said, you're in the contest, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. And without saying anything else, he reached into a satchel, pulled out a bottle of oil, unscrewed it, dipped his finger in it, and started walking towards me. And dabbed me in the forehead. And before I could say anything, he just looked at me and he said, I've just anointed you. I said, huh? He said, no, you don't understand. I'm a man of faith. What I just did was very important. I've just anointed you. You're going to be the one who makes it. Now, I'll be honest. I had no idea what was going on. And plus I'm black. So I was like, am I ashy? What's happening? I don't understand what's going on. And he just kept saying, I've anointed you. I've anointed you. I've anointed you. Thankfully, the third floor came. And I hopped off that elevator as fast as I could. And I got into the contest. Everybody's speaking. And then it's my turn. And I'm in the contest and I'm rolling. And in the middle of my contest speech, my mind goes blank. Now, keep in mind, this is a contest. Like if my mind went blank today, I could easily say to you, where were we? You can't do that in the contest. You got to be darn near perfect. So I didn't know what to do. It had never happened to me before. And I just gave up. And I just started looking around the room. And then my eyes latched onto his. And at that exact moment, everything came rushing back. And I picked up where I left off and I finished my speech. Now, here's the interesting thing about when I lost my mind. I was actually supposed to pause. Right? I don't know if I was supposed to pause that long, but I was supposed to pause. So I finished the speech and the contest master comes up and says, the winner of the division contest is Craig Valentine. And all these people start rushing the stage. And the very first thing they said to me was, Craig, the reason you won, that pause. Oh my goodness, that pause was so amazing. What a wonderful pause. What a wonderful pause. All I could think was, well, you know, I am anointed. but he never claimed me. You got to understand, there are people who say, I helped Craig Valentine win the world championship, and they didn't. He actually helped me, but he never claimed me. He just came into my life, lifted it, and left. Isn't it appropriate that we met in an elevator? Because he met me at one level and left me at another. So did you see what was happening in between the lines there, right? It wasn't about the lines. It was about this. 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 It was about it was about all of that, all the things that were happening in between the lines. As my good friend Darren LaCroix would say, reactions tell the story. So always ask yourself, what can I do before, during, and after my lines to make the story congruent and to make people feel it and not just hear it? Okay, so now you have some ideas on how to craft your message, some ideas on how to deliver your message. Let's look at how to sell your message and take the exact next step you want them to take. Here's how you sell your message.
Never sell a product, always sell what? The result. Years ago, I went to buy my first car ever in life. And I went to the dealership, and the salesperson came up to me, and he said, "Are you looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Good, let me tell you about it. This car has these types of brakes, this type of engine, this type of power, this type of window." What's he trying to sell me? The car. I just said, never sell a product, always sell what? The result. So I said, thank you, but no thank you, I'm not interested. I went to a different dealership, same day, different salesperson, same car. Now, I gotta be honest, he must have anticipated where I was in my life at that time. You know, young and single and looking to mingle. And feel free to use that one. And he came up to me and he said, "Are you looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Ooh, you're gonna look good in that one." Yeah, man, you're gonna be flying down the road, the wind's gonna be blowing through your hair, and the girls, let me tell you, the girls will be all over you. What do you think I did? I said, "Where do I sign?" He made the sale not because he sold me the car, but he sold me what? The result, and he lied. Oh, I was lonely as I could be in that car. Just me and my payment.
Never sell a product, always sell the result. Now, let me ask you, raise your hand if a year from now you'd like to be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. Good. Then for absolutely free, for no fee, you can go to one of my websites, which is 52speakingtips.com. That's 52speakingtips.com. And every week for a year, you're going to get an audio lesson from me. And at the end of that year, you will be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. Now, stop right there. What was the result I just mentioned? You got it, Lee? What was the result? What was the result?
You got me to look it up, to
3 times better.
Yeah, three times better. Yeah. 3 times better.
Yes.
Now, what was the resource? The website. Which one did I mention first?
52. Oh, I only remember 52.
Somebody said free. yeah. Listen, here's the addition to that formula. Never sell a product, always sell the result. Always put the result before the resource. In leadership, always state the result before the request. Because if I had done it the other way around, it would have sounded like this. Raise your hand if you'd like to receive 52 emails from me. I don't think my opt-in rate would be as high, Craig. So very important, never sell a product, always sell the result, always put the result before the resource. Now, I want to do something, I want to give away a prize. But before I give away a prize, you got to understand this. We're going to have a quick Q&A, but you never close your speech with a Q&A. Why? Never close with the Q&A. Anybody can yell it out. Why?
Because you need the key message to stay home. Q&A is just questions.
That's it. Have a Q&A if you want to, but don't make it the last thing people hear. Right? People remember best what they hear first and what they hear last. You need to be the absolute last thing in their ear. Plus, can't some people ask some crazy questions? The best 2-day management seminar I ever gave in my life, I ruined it at the end because I asked the wrong question. I asked, are there any questions? And a lady in the front row looked up and said, yes, I love the reinforcement techniques you gave us to reinforce the behaviors of our employees. I'm just wondering, do you think these same reinforcement techniques will work with my horses? And a guy in the back stood up and said, nay. Now, I do that one for me. I do that one for me. But I don't want them to leave thinking about horses. You understand? So people remember best what they hear first and what they hear last. All right, I'm going to give away a prize, a big prize, the biggest prize I possibly can. But before I give it away, I want you to listen to why it's so important. And I'll come back and finish this story. Listen to what happened to me, and then you'll understand why this prize is important. Before I give this away, you got to understand something. If you had picked up my phone in the year 2000, you would have heard a woman from the Michigan Consolidated Gas Company say to me, Craig, we want you to come out and speak, and for 45 minutes, we're going to pay you $3,500. Now, keep in mind, I'm a new speaker. I'd already won the world championship, but I was a new speaker. This is my first highly paid keynote. I was very excited, but what else do you think I was? Scared to death. And to make things worse, they flew me out first class. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I get to the airport, swept me up in a black limo. Took me out, wined and dined me, took me over to the 5-star hotel, swept me up the next morning in that same black limo, drove me over to the event. As I'm walking up on stage, the lady who brought me in tucks into my jacket pocket a check for $3,500. And I walked up on that stage and I gave them a $150 speech. I failed miserably. It was so bad that the lady who convinced all her higher-ups to hire me, I mean, she really went to bat for me. When I stepped off of that stage, she couldn't even look me in the eyes. Devastated. Even the limo driver was looking at me like, man, I still gotta take you back? Now, that was the year 2000. Fast forward 20 years to today. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it because you know where I came from. But my rehire rate today exceeds 90%. You know what that means? That means if you hired me once, chances are very good you're going to bring me back again, Rafiq. 90%. But you know what that means? That begs the question, what made the difference? Huh? What made the difference between where I was then? The company doesn't want to see my face. They don't want to see my name. I'm on their wall of shame. And they're not going to see my face. You know why? They don't even exist anymore. I think I put them out of business. I was that bad. But what makes the difference between that and companies calling me up today saying, Craig, we want you to come out here and speak. We're willing to work around your schedule. When are you free? I say, I'm not free. I'm available. But what do you think makes the difference? So I'm going to ask you, what do you think makes the difference? Just unmute yourself. What made the difference?
Experience. Experience and practice.
Okay. What else?
And practice.
Practice. Good. What else?
Reputation.
You said reputation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. These are good. And raise your hand if you know Darren LaCroix. Okay, well then Darren says what? Stage time. But I said to Darren, what if you get a whole lot of stage time, but you're practicing the wrong things? Couldn't you be, damaging what you're doing? And sometimes that's hard to undo. So I'll tell you exactly what made the difference. After my embarrassment in the year 2000, which you shouldn't have to go through, and you won't if you listen closely, I rededicated myself to the art of public speaking. And I invested thousands upon thousands of dollars in coaching. My coach was charging me $4,000 per day. And I went through year after frustrating year just trying to figure out a process that works. I'm just like, give me a process that works some of the time. And I'm happy to say I got a process that works basically all the time. And I'm even happier because I was able to bottle up this and put it into a system called the Speak and Prosper Academy. Everything that made the difference between where I was then and where I am today is in this system. Imagine what it can do for you. Now, it's $797 online, but somebody's going to get it for free right now just for answering a question. and you're going to get lifetime access to all 8 home study courses, everything from humor to mastering back of the room sales to storytelling to creating a keynote so you can actually get paid to speak. All these things, you're going to get access to that for life. All right, here's the question. I should have got my trophy. It was right there. I was going to bring it here and hold it up, but here's the question. And here's the premise. Specifics stick. Specifics stick. Remember that when it comes to storytelling. The lady who ran up to me in the Chicago airport and started reading the bottom of my trophy. Now, I forgot to tell you this. You need to write it down and hold it up. You're going to have to write your answer down and hold it up. All right. The lady who ran up to me in the Chicago airport and started reading the bottom of my trophy, what was she wearing? You got it, Rafiq? You have it? What do you think?
Well, I would like to give the opportunity to our attendees.
Okay. Hold it up, write it down and hold it up if you know. What was she? I see Roxanne, move it closer. Oh, Roanne, she went away. Let me scroll through and see if I can see anybody on these other pages. Write it down and hold it up. Okay, I don't see anybody yet. I want to give this away really badly. I want you to have lifetime access to it. All right, Rafiq. Unmute yourself. All right, you know what? I saw Roanne hold something up. I don't even know if she got the answer right or not, but I'm going to give the prize to her. Okay?
Oh
so Roanne.
I'm holding.
Roanne, congratulations. You get lifetime access to the Speak and Prosper course. Now, I do want to say this. It is available. It's $797. But because you invited me to speak and you've been so gracious to me, even though it's about 11 o'clock at night, you've been so gracious to me, I'm going to do you a favor and I'm going to waive the shipping fee. Okay, so let's keep moving. No, it's online. Right? So listen, I want to do something I never do. It's not $797. It's not $497. But just for the next 30 minutes, because I made this live to the world, but just for the next 30 minutes, it's a one-time payment of $297 for lifetime access to the Academy with monthly calls from me as well. Now, how do you get it? It's simple. All you have to do is hold your phone up to this QR code and it will take you there immediately. Or you can go to the handout and the handout has a link at the bottom that should be able to take you there as well. Or you can visit speakandprosperacademy.com. But I promise you that $297 will only be up for the next 30 minutes. Okay, so very good. So let's have a really quick Q&A and then I'm going to close. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask and then I'm going to close my
Thank you, Craig. I think that was a great session, wonderful, and I just jumped in so that we can have I think the right questions posted to you. All right, now here's the thing, like how we've been doing in the past. If you have a question, please raise your hand or post it on the comment box, and I'm going to call you very quickly so you can direct your question directly to Craig. So I'm looking at anyone raising your hand right now. I don't. All right. While we do that, let me call upon our first reactor. We have a reactor today who will be reacting to your presentation and give us some feedback of how he felt about the entire workshop and the webinar, followed by kickstarting the Q&A with the very first question. And in order to do so, joining us all the way from Greece, District 109. Yes, Craig, go ahead.
Okay, well, you know, oh, is it going to be panels? Okay, feel free. I usually finish before they do the review, but that's fine if you want to do the review first. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So let me call upon all the way from Greece, District 109, Toastmaster Panos Corel, who's supposed to have become Panos Corelis today. So Panos Corel, please take it away and kickstart with your feedback followed by the question.
Thank you, Rafiq, and thank you, Craig, for the opportunity to be sitting in your company tonight. And good morning, everyone. It is 6 a.m. here in Greece and well worth the investment in the loss of time. Of sleeping time, that is. That sounded so wrong. The loss of sleep is what I meant. All right, now that we got things straight, Craig, first of all, first of all, let me tell you that the foundational phrase was the #1 advice that I also got from Darren once. And the way that he supported it, he said that you cannot be sure that your audience is listening 100% and 100% of the time. So when you have a foundational phrase that you echo that a couple of times through your speech, then your audience arrives together with you at the conclusion, and then it sticks with them.
Oh, that's great, because he got that from me.
All right, all right.
That's,
so it's always,
foundational phrase is mine, but hopefully he attributed to me. Yeah. Okay.
It's always nice to see that also the best are learning from the best.
Yeah.
So, Craig, tonight with your storytelling, you took us to the best nation in the world, which is?
Imagination.
Imagination. Exactly. Yeah, I got that from you. And let me tell you that you showed and proved to us tonight that you do live to give. And thank you for all the value you have given, and to our friend in the audience, I'm sure that you made her day, if not her entire month. My question to you, Dave, is Chicago, 1999. You're thrust on the stage, and when you get off the stage, get the trophy. You have reached the apex, the pinnacle. You are the most successful speaker in the world for that entire year, and for, as you have proven, couple of decades to come. You're a unique case, and you know that. What kept you going? Because you know you could have cashed off this success into many other areas, but you kept speaking, you kept evolving as a speaker, and that inspires me personally, because success is one motive. The love of the art is a deeper motive. Perhaps there is an even deeper motive, maybe value driven. And that is what I'm digging for to discover in you today. And I'm very interested in your view on that. For what lies beyond the top? Thank you for tonight, Craig. I benefit from listening.
I appreciate you. I don't know if you know this, but the first thing I did when I got off the plane after I won the world championship was I went to the bookstore and I bought another book on the art of public speaking, because I believe that what got you here won't get you there. So to answer your question, I think it just comes from an understanding that you're only as good as your next speech. And I never looked at the world championship as being a pinnacle. I looked at it as being a prompt, something to get me started, because I was only about a year in. And so I'm hoping that 20 years later, I'm a much better speaker than I was back in 1999, especially when I was speaking 100 miles per hour back then. But thank you so much for your participation. All right, I do want to say this as we come to a close, because I know there are a number of, or Rafiq, did you want to ask any questions, or should I close up now?
Yeah, Craig, how we usually do this is we open the floor for a couple of questions, because we have energized and enthusiastic audience. So we'll just open it for a couple of minutes if you allow us to do so.
That's fine.
And I'll try my best to take as much questions as possible. So I'm going to run through this. So you got to keep up with my fast pace,
No problem. I can go fast.
All right. Excellent. We got the first question coming in from Toastmaster Claire Linatalk. If you can hear us, please unmute yourself, ma'am, and please go ahead and ask the question directly to Craig. Toastmaster Claire Linatalk.
So yeah, thank you very much, Toastmaster Craig, for that wonderful workshop. I just wanted to ask, how do you choose the stories that you want to tell?
It's going to be nowadays based on the audience. Who am I speaking to? What do they want to cover? And that will determine which stories I bring into my presentation. But it brings about a good point, which is I really feel like everybody should have a story file. Right? And Darren maybe will talk to you about this as well, but have a story file, because that's the best way that you can not get ready, but stay ready, right? And you can use those stories online. You can use them on Zoom. You can use them on stage. You can use them in radio interviews, television interviews, but you should always have those stories at your disposal to tell. And mine is just based on which audience. And so if it's like a healthcare company that's service oriented or sales oriented, I'm going to bring in more of the car story and the sales story and the 3 times better and that sort of thing. So it's all based on what my client wants to get. And that's a very important point also. When it comes to speaking, it's never about what I came to give. It's always about what you came to get. So even the way you frame your presentation, I see some speakers say, today I'd like to offer you 3 points. No, today you're going to receive 3 points. It's not about what I came to give. It's about what you came to get. Frame your message that way and you'll be in good shape. And the foundational phrase should always be you focused as well, focused on your audience. Notice I didn't say, my dream is not for sale. The foundational phrase is, your dream is not for sale. Right?
Right. Thank you
Good
so
question.
much, Claire. And thank you, Toastmaster Craig. We have next question coming in from District 80, Toastmaster Shan Lee. If you can hear us, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
I see the box.
Shan Lee from District 80. All right. Calling once. If you're not, I'm going to move ahead. We've got a question coming in also from Toastmaster Hazel Pasquale. Toastmaster Hazel, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello, Craig. And
Hello, Hazel.
And congratulations for winning the World Championship of Public Speaking. Just 1 year being a Toastmaster. And I was wondering if you can give us tips on how we can also reach the World Championships.
Yeah, I think the number one step is to master storytelling. That's the number one step. Dive into storytelling. And here's what I suggest for the contest. One major story, one foundational phrase. Darren's was ouch, right? One major story, one foundational phrase. Now you might have a second tag on story, but if you look back at the winners, they usually had one major story that carried that presentation for them. The one thing I wouldn't do is try to make 3 points in 7 minutes. That's too much. There's an old speaker proverb that says, when you squeeze your information in, you squeeze your audience out. So don't try to make 3 points in 7 minutes, because then you're not going to be able to do justice to either one of those points. So one major story, one foundational phrase that you repeat a couple of times. And of course, the story should evoke people's emotion in some way. But contrary to popular belief, nobody has to die in the story for you to win. Okay, so nobody died in my story and I still won. So tell a story, make a point, foundational phrase, and that's what I would say for the contest.
All right, thank you so much.
By the way, I coached, one of my students was Manoj, who won in 2017. Yeah, and in 2011, I worked with Dhananjaya, and then he won in 2014. I didn't coach him, but I just sat with him, gave him some advice and so forth, held up his hand in victory. And a few years later, there he was as the world champion. In 2000, my driver in Atlanta was Dwayne Smith. And then later on that year, he went on to win the world championship. So the other way you can win the world championship, if I ever come to your city, just drive me somewhere. I have some advice for you and maybe you can.
Okay, hope
it seems to
you
work.
come to the Philippines then.
I hope so. But thank you, Hazel. I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Hazel, and thank you, Craig. We got another question coming in. I think this is from India. We've got Toastmaster Prasad Arumugam. If you can go ahead and mute yourself, Prasad Arumugam, and ask your question to Craig.
Hi, actually I'm from Singapore, but my question is, what's a mistake you see many experienced Toastmasters making that you feel is something that can be easily avoided? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. It's something that I actually brought up in this workshop, which is they're not speaking to one and looking to all. They keep speaking to everybody. They keep saying friends and folks and ladies and gentlemen, and you don't need to do that. Speak to one, look to all. They also, when it comes to back of the room sales and things like that, they're trying to sell the product rather than selling the result. And write this down. What's loose is lost. What's loose is lost. And what I mean by that is what's not tied to a story or an anchor will be lost. So it's almost like if you can picture, I would use the whiteboard, but I'm not going to use that. But if you can picture a story, a circle, and then picture a dot next to it. Circle, dot. The circle is the story. The dot is the point. Then you got another circle, another story, another point. Well, each one of those points will be attached to that story, so you'll remember it. But what a lot of speakers do is they'll tell a story and then dot, 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 dot. And they'll just keep spurting out messages. Well, guess what? The last 4 of those points aren't going to be remembered because they're loose. So what's loose is lost. Make sure that everything is tied to a story or another anchor. The types of anchors I have, 4 A's for anchors. There's an anecdote. When people remember the anecdote, they remember the point that's attached to it. There's an activity. When people remember the activity or reflect on that, they remember what it means. There's an analogy. When people remember the analogy, they remember what it represents. And of course, an acronym. When people see an acronym, they know what it stands for. Other than that, it's going to be loose. So we want to make sure everything is tied to one of those anchors. What's
all right,
loose
excellent.
is
Thank you,
lost.
Prasad. Thank you, Prasad from Singapore. We've got some anonymous questions for you, Craig. I'm going to quickly rush through them. Well, the first question says, Craig, how do you work on vocal variety? Yours is magical. Your vocal variety makes it easy for me to imagine.
Thank you. When I was young, I had a lisp, a speech impediment that was so bad that a man referred to me as Daffy Duck. And I usually tell that story sometimes. But what I did, let's see what book I can read for you. I would take any book. Let me take one of mine. I would take any book. Say I'm taking guerrilla marketing, which I have a chapter in. And right before I went to sleep, I would over-exaggerate the vocal variety. And I would over-exaggerate the diction so that I spoke clearer. So I would go something like this. You got to do it to the point of almost ridiculousness, because when you get on stage, you're going to find that happy medium. But I would go to bed and I'd say something like this. Now, if you're like many small business owners and entrepreneurs, you're not crazy about copywriting. Perhaps you don't believe that a good writer, or perhaps you don't believe that I can't read. I didn't win the world championship of reading. Okay. Perhaps you don't like how long it takes to write promotional materials. Maybe you tried, but it produced lackluster results. So in other words, I'm just playing with it. But guess what happens? Your subconscious mind works on it overnight while you're asleep, if you make it the last thing you do before you go to sleep. And then you wake up in the morning with better vocal variety than you had when you went to sleep. That's what I did for years and years and years. And now it's natural for me. But believe me, this naturalness is on the far side of preparation, not the near side of preparation. Right?
All right.
Question.
Excellent. Thank you for that anonymous question. We got Julius Cruz. He's interested to ask you a question very quickly. Julius, please unmute yourself.
Julius, I see you. Go ahead, Julius.
Yeah. Hello, Greg. Craig, good morning, and thank you very much for the helpful tips. My question goes, considering the many professional speakers nowadays, what do you think is your differentiator that gets you a 90% hit rate in terms of return to business engagement?
I think 2 things. One, I think I rehearse more than most people. I really do. I've done a lot of workshops with other speakers, and they are surprised that I even rehearsed. And I'm very surprised that they don't. So it's extremely important to rehearse, but I don't rehearse so that I can remember what I say. I rehearse so that I can abandon what I say. Because if somebody in the audience says something, I want to be able to jump on that spontaneous moment, and I want to be able to dance with them in that moment and then come back and not lose where I am, right? And so I rehearse so that I don't memorize my speeches, I internalize them. And I think that's a difference maker. And the other difference maker for why they invite me back a lot is because they're going to laugh a lot. People like to laugh. They love to laugh. So I always say I make my audience tall, T-A-L-L, think, act, laugh, and learn. Right, Panos? Think, act, laugh, and learn. So I think that's what makes the difference, Julius.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Julius.
Yeah. I think I read another question. Oh, somebody asked a question about how do you make your voice more powerful? Now, I'm not going to give you this advice saying that you have to take it or that you should take it. I'm telling you that I did it. So if you're a lawyer, trust me. And I'll put this out there too. Check with your doctor before you do it. But what I did, I started learning about people like Demosthenes, right? The great Panos, you know what I'm talking about, right? The great Greek orator, Demosthenes. He used to have a speech impediment. And what he did to solve it was he used to put marbles in his mouth And yeah, and he would work on his diction in that way. But something else he used to do is he used to recite his speeches while running on the beaches. He used to recite his speeches. So I don't live near any beaches, but I have the next best thing, hills. And so I started reciting my speeches while I'm running up hills. And again, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just telling you what I did. Because guess what? The way you breathe when you run is the way you breathe when you speak. And that made my voice much more powerful. And so had I not done that, I don't know where I would be with my voice these days. But that's something that I definitely attribute to the running and the breathing. Breathing is a very big part of speaking. Good question.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig. I'm going to quickly read out a few comments, and then I'm going to hand the control back to you for your closing remarks.
Thank you.
Arlene Cheng says, Craig, failure made you better. That led you to excel in what you did. Thank you. And then Roanne says, thank you so much, OMG. Thank you so much, Craig, for the giveaway. I truly wanted to learn so much this year. We've got another one coming in from Tess. Tess says, thank you, Craig. I love your talk. It was so enriching.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all of those comments. I really do. And for anybody on the call today, thank you. It is about 11:15 p.m. here. So I'll be going to sleep soon, but I'll be having good dreams because of you. So I just want to say thank you. And I'll say this as I close, and I want to go through a big close, but I'll say it anyway. What people don't know about me is that in the actually the mid 1990s, I was an events planner. And one of my jobs was setting up the stage for the speaker, right? Imagine all the time wanting to be the speaker. And so I would go into the empty auditoriums and I'd lay down the tape and I'd tape over the cords, power cords, and I'd move the chairs around and I'd move the lectern around and I'd move around more chairs, but it never failed. Anytime I went into one of those auditoriums, I always went up to the front, stood behind the lectern, and looked out on an empty audience and hoped and wished that one day people would show up to see me. And I always said the same thing when I stood behind those lecterns. I always said, today I move the chairs, tomorrow I move the audience. So hopefully you've been moved today. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Craig. It's lovely, and we really appreciate you joining us this late. And this is what makes you a committed champion, I would say, a champion that's loved by many of us. And it's not just been 1 or 2 years. As we speak, it's been a really long time since we last saw you win that World Championship public speaking. But it's so fresh and still connecting with each and every one of us here present today. Thank you so much for that. Lovely having you, Craig. And we're going to let you have your good night's sleep. And as you said, you know, your formula is that once you speak, people ask you to come back again. We're definitely going to ask you to come back again, this time with a driver and with a car to take you around to the Philippines so you can see.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rafiq. I can't wait. Thank you very much. Take care.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Before I leave you all and before I ask you all, thank you for joining. I've got something to share with you. As you all know that we are at volume 2 and this was our episode number 2 featuring Craig Valentine. But our Division K director, Toastmaster Adrenaline, is relentless to present more and more nuts and bolts of wisdom. So in this pursuit of our Division K director, Toastmaster Adrenaline, we will be coming back with episode number 3. And those of you who are guessing what episode number 3 is going to be all about and who is it going to feature, I guarantee you it is going to be another powerhouse of public speaking. And hold your applause, and here is the reveal. All right, so we are going to be back again, and that is going to be on the 19th, and this time we'll be featuring episode number 3 with the 1992 World Champion of Public Speaking, Toastmaster Dana Lamont. Now, those of you who've heard Dana Lamont in the past, you know it doesn't get better than this. So we've got Mark, we've got Craig, and now we have Dana coming in and sharing his nuts and bolts and his vast, I would say, ocean of knowledge and wisdom with us. So stay tuned in on the 19th of Are we in May? Yeah, we are in May. 19th of May to hear Dana Lamont. On that note, thank you so much. You've been a lovely audience, and I try to open the floor for as many questions as possible. And here's the key. For those of you who have not seen our episodes, or those of you who are joining us every episode in Volume 1 and here in Volume 2, here's the key. You might want to send your questions in advance to me when the chat is open, you know, while the session is going on. One-on-one, send the questions to me so I can easily browse through them, and I can make sure I give maximum time to all your questions, because I try to be as fast as possible. So on that note, I'm going to see you back again one more time on the 19th, and I'm going to ask our Division K Director, Toastmaster Adrenaline, please take it away. Thank you so much. It's been lovely hosting this event one more time. Division K Director, Toastmaster Adrenaline, are you with us?
Yeah.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Hello. Good evening. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Good afternoon and good evening. Thank you so much, Toastmaster Craig, for gracing our event today. It's an honor and privilege for us here in Division K. And thank you for your wonderful tips and your great storytelling skills that you have shared with us. So again, fellow Toastmasters, be with us on our 3rd episode with Dana Lamont. So watch out for the time and the date on May 19th. And then now, as Division K Director, I officially joined this webinar workshop.
Toastmaster Adrenaline, I think our attendees are curious to know what time do they log in. So if you can just quickly tell us the timing as well for Philippines time. So
okay, for Dana Lamont, it will be on May 19, 10 a.m. Philippine time. So GMT +8 for everyone. So that's the time for Dana Lamont on May 19.
All right, can we now have a picture moment, please? I would like to ask all of you to please turn on your cameras so we can have a very quick picture moment with the grid view, so we can cover as many as possible in one frame, and then you can have them posted on our Facebook page under Division K, and also at District 75, or on the personal wall of our Division K Director, Toastmaster Adrenaline, or one of the organizers here. So let me see your best smiles, and when you're ready, on 1, 2, and 3, let me just unhook this video first so I can have a grid view. Are you going to do that for us, Toastmaster Adrenaline, or shall I do the honors?
Please do it, Rafiq. I cannot take a picture because I'm using phone right now.
All right, let me just quickly close the chat. So we've got all attendees here. All right, smile please, going 1, 2, and 3 for screen number 1. All right, just a minute. I'm going to save that. So we can go for screen 2. And that is saved. All right, now going to screen number 2. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Give us your thumbs up and your best smile, please. Going screen number 2. Excellent. Lovely smiles coming in from Shorhu Tan, Arlene Cheng, Arceli Guman, Loli, Bing, Tasnase Petra, Chunkiat. All right. We see all of you with great smiles. Do we have screen number 3? Let me quickly go into screen number 3 now. Bear with me so I can save this very quickly here. Screen 1. There you go. And now we have here screen 2. Wow. And now we're going for screen number 3. Let me see those lovely smiles again. Mary Ann, can we see your smile?
Oh, we look beautiful.
We've got Toastmaster Loli again on screen number 3. Some of you have not turned on your cameras. I'm going to give you 3 seconds to turn on your camera so we can have your lovely smile seen on the screen. All right, so here's going screen number 3. Lovely. All right, so that's a wrap. We've got all 3 screens, and I'm going to see you all again on the 19th of May, 10 a.m., the same time that you've logged in for Craig Valentine's workshop. You log in the same time for Dana Lamont. See you all. Have a good morning and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.